Okay, so 6 years ago, on March 31st, 2016, Zaha Hadid died. And I will make two presentations about her today. Kind of like a commemorative presentation. One, it's a little bit informal, a little bit unusual for me to make such a presentation, but let's begin with this, Zaha Hadid and the subaquatic creatures, because I thought there is a relationship, a possible formal relationship, at least formal, between the aquatic creatures and her architecture. And let's look at some of these creatures as the word goes. I think they are indeed similar, or her architecture is or became similar. In fact, I saw today a project published on Arch Daily of Zaha Hadid architects, or on the zine, I forgot, but today it was published, very similar to what we look at here. And you know, even here there are very interesting you know, creations of nature that could make us think of Zaha Hadid's architecture. This is almost the airport in Beijing. You know, it's the truth of the matter is architecture could find a lot of inspiration in unusual places, so to speak, of the natural world. Even this, I would say, has some reflections, well, you know, maybe a little bit ominous in some of her buildings. The truth is, nature has such an unbelievable richness that you know, to ignore it and to, and like herself said, you know, in nature, you know, not in nature, there are 360 degrees. Why are we using only one? Now, this person, Valerie Buss, twists and turns paper into magical underwater creatures. These are artistic works. I thought of including them in this presentation. Um, Now let's look at some of her drawings, Zaha Hadid drawings. Her drawings are of a most unusual kind, especially for the conventionally trained architect. You know, this is how she expressed her ideas from the very beginning. You know, halfway between being a project and being, you know, an abstract painting. She became famous when she won the competition for the Peak in Hong Kong. It was an international competition in Hong Kong, I think in 1982, and she won the first prize. And since then, her career, you know, blossomed. But look, you know, who would say that this is an architectural, you know, representation? Let's not call it a project. But I love this about Zaha, and I would love this about any architect who understands that architecture is to be based on a vision, and how you express that vision is really up to you, to your own personality. Some people work in a certain way, other people work in a different way. Let's give them the freedom to express themselves at their best. You know, why restrict them? there is a tornado in her work, you know. And when I wrote about her in 1992, I said that perhaps women are the most entitled to be animated by such a tornado. Well, I was trying to make kind of a feminist statement. I also want to say something else. I forgot exactly then. I think yes, a few months after she died, I think in 2016, I launched a competition, a house for Zaha Hadid, and you can see the entries to this competition on www.icarch.us. We received a number of projects, and there was a nice jury with 5 architects, three from the Architectural Association in London, and if I remember well, 2 from the United States. Anyway, but look at this drawing. You know, most architects will say this is nonsense. This is not the architect. This is not the drawing of an architect. Well, Zaha Hadid made it, and not very different building was built. So, you know, how are we supposed to reach new horizons, maybe horizons of hope, if we do not experiment various ways of drawing, of thinking, of feeling, of building, and so on? Very well, someone might say this is just about form. Well, she built so many buildings, and important buildings and large buildings with various functions. Yes, you don't see here the toilet or the bathroom or the parking lot, but she was obviously very capable of handling those things. Once you make a project that you truly believe in, and form is important, you find ways to create also the functional things that are necessary to a building, at least in acceptable ways, if not more than this. Also, it's interesting the return of the ornament, and also in a way, the flower or the butterfly wings, like here. This is in a way a feminization of architecture that I think is needed. And her first projects were rather explosive and angular. Fluidities arrived later, and her last works actually, and I'm going to show also in the second presentation, works done after she died in her office, which continues its activities, where this trend or this path is followed with more increased richness. The resolution is not very good, but this, let's call it artwork or rendering, belonged to that project, the Peak from 1982, which she won. In her office, she also had a section. There were some people who, were paid by her in order to work for, jewelry or, dresses, fashion design, shoes, and so on. I was told, or I read somewhere, that, if she was invited to a party, she would, go immediately to that department in her office and tell them, I need a new pair of shoes. Here is a sketch. You make the project. You make the precise design, and will manufacture it, or a bag, and so on. You say this is crazy. You say this is extravagant. Yes, it is crazy, and yes, it is extravagant. But this brings flavor to life, and someone with such a force, because he obviously had an incredible force, you know, was able to allow herself to have such a capriciousness. You know, I mean, look, this was built. This was built. You know, most architects don't even have the nerve to dream it or to think of it. She built it. And it's not the only one, as you know. The Opus building in Dubai, built. You know, I mean, why are we so timid? You know, most of us. Why? Okay, this building maybe is not the most sustainable building in the world. It's true, it's not. But then there are so many other buildings, much less interesting, that are equally unsustainable. So, you know, yes, you know, plus she built them when there wasn't so much concern with sustainability, with the melting of the icebergs and so on. At least she created something intriguing. Do you think these buildings on the right or on the left are or were or will be, you know, highly sustainable? No, no. At least hers is has that sincere arrogance Frank Lloyd Wright talked about. Also, what is worth mentioning is that, you know, you live in the 21st century, you live in the year 2022. We do have at our disposal certain technologies which exist, and it would be, you know, awkward not to use them. You know, how are we supposed to belong to our time if we don't use the tools of our time? You know, she used them. She uses them. And I think this was a good thing. I have seen three buildings by her. I have seen the Museum of Art in Cincinnati. I have seen the library in Vienna and the housing complex also in Vienna. And I have to say, I went with students in architecture from Romania, and they were very excited to be inside the building by Zaha Hadid, a big library in Vienna. I didn't find that building totally blameless. I personally thought that the interior didn't truly evoke a library, but yes, the spatial reality of the building, the space that is, was impressive, and the fluidities and so on. In my opinion, for my taste, it was a little bit too white, too much whiteness. What is very interesting is that her declared aim was to make an architecture that was raw, earthy, and vital. She declared this: raw, earthy, and vital. Now, maybe her architecture was and is vital, but I don't think it is raw, and I don't think it is earthy. Maybe she would have arrived there, maybe, if she lived longer. I don't know. But her architecture is rather sleek. It's not raw, not at all, and it's not earthy. It's very artificial. So it's interesting that, you know, would you say that this building is raw or earthy? Not at all. But it is an interesting building, and, you know, I mean, most architects, if they build just this building, they would be happy. They would be very happy. Well, she built many more. Zaha Hadid unveiled sinuous skyscrapers for Australia's Gold Coast. Look at that, you know. Can you do this with the T-square and the rectangle? I don't think you can. Well, you know, you could make a sketch like this, but to transform it into a working drawing and to a buildable project, you can't. You need sophisticated digital technology to do that. And she has it. She has it because she had the courage, and you are going to see later a picture of her with Frank Gehry. These people understood to be in the forefront of architecture. They understood they have to use the tools of the present as much as possible. to push the frontiers, to search for the new. Now, I understand, you know, some with a more melancholical disposition could question this. But let's look here, the buildings on the right here, and these buildings. Her proposal, which ones are more interesting? Well, I would say these two. I mean, isn't it obvious? That's because here there was an architect who had the courage to propose new kinds of towers, formally engaging. Archive and library building in Montpellier. This is the project. I think she built it. And her works are actually, you know, well, if you know well her works, you could say, yes, they are by Zaha Hadid. But, you know, they are very different. Like this building is very different from these towers. Now, this stadium in Qatar, which we are going to see very soon when that championship, soccer championship starts, it was built. It was built, and it's only because of the unfairness of the Japanese that she didn't build a, you know, rather similar one in Tokyo for the Olympics last year. She won the competition. But the Japanese, for some reason, chose not to honor the first prize, and they instead asked Dan Coma to build, in my opinion, a more mediocre stadium than the one Zaha Hadid won the competition with. But this one was built. Now, here is the residential towers in Brisbane riverfront, the blossoming. Interesting, even the word blossoming, which is from you know, blooming is from the word of the world of plants. And you know, to have blossoming buildings, this is not a cynical vision. It's a generous vision. It's a vision inspired by the world of nature, of plants, of flowers, you know, blossoming flowers, blossoming towers. They were not built, but she made this proposal. Now, this building, the Polytechnic University Jockey Club Innovation Tower, I always liked. In my opinion, is one of her best works. I like the fact that it's both audacious and a little bit, maybe I don't use the appropriate word, a little bit melancholy, in the sense that you see is leaning, kind of like the tower in Pisa. She made it in this way. This building she realized in her partnership with Patrick Schumacher, and I'm going to talk more about this in the second presentation. A very, very fruitful and unusual partnership. He really brought something to her work and to her firm, and now he is leading that firm. But this is, I think, a very fine building, and you know, look at it. You know, it's organic. It's a whole. It's surprising. It's not Cartesian. It's falling, leaning a little bit, but it's still standing. It's massive. In my opinion, is an excellent building. I repeat what I already said. If most architects would build just this building, and they would be very proud. But she built, I don't know, maybe, you know, I don't know, more than 50, close to 100, maybe more. I don't know. I didn't count her buildings, but she built enormously. You know, and you know, look at this building, which is okay. You look at this building, maybe it's a little bit less okay. And all of a sudden you see this building, which is unique, you know, is unique. And it's yes, it's audacious. It has guts. This is creativity. This woman had genius. I mean, how else to put it? You know, I mean, just to run an office of 400, 450 people without creating anything would be immensely difficult. Plus, she was also teaching. She was also parting. She was also designing furniture, shoes, dresses, bags, jewelry, you name it. Look at this building. Who I can't imagine someone not liking it. Although probably there are such people, but it's like a creation of nature, but done with artificial means. Hoxton Square building, art gallery in London. It was not built. It's a project that was not built. But if it was built, it would have been very interesting and very different from the building that we just saw, which was built. You know, when I look at these works, I see creativity and I become joyous because creativity generates joy, hope. It's life. It's life. You know, imagine two parents give birth to a son and a daughter who look identically with the son and the daughter of a neighbor, and so on. This is the unbearable result of you know, normatization. You know, where you are free to assert your own DNA, your own you know, personality and specificity, and you just repeat the work that was done by other people. That's why there is no hope in that. Here there is. You know, she didn't imitate this building. She didn't imitate this building. She created her own building with her own will, her own sensitivity, her own longings, whatever. I don't know. I'm a great adversary of repetition and you know, similarity and all those tactics and strategies of not expressing ourselves, actually being afraid. They are strategies of fear. You know, we live now in the 21st century, for God's sake. You know, we have the tools to create magnificent things. Why not create them like this one? The City of Dreams Hotel. Dreams, yes. Look at this. It was built. It was built. It was built, yes. Well, so, you know, there are still people who throw stones at Zaha Hadid. How could you throw stones, you know? I mean, you know, we cannot even draw it. Forget about making a construction project. I mean, you know, the working drawings, and forget about building it. It was built. There was an important Romanian poet, Ștefan Augustin Doinaș, who said something similar to, you know, like in life, only what is a wonder, o minune, deserves to be. And I think we should listen to the poets, you know. If we don't create something which is a minune, a wonder, why create it? Why, in fact, the word created, the verb to create is not appropriate any longer. If you don't give life to something that is alive, I mean, you know, then the verb to create is not the correct one. You know, what we see here is the structure becoming ornamental and the ornament becoming structural. And this is very important. And this is also very important to Patrick Schumacher. And this we are going to talk more about in the second presentation, where he understood that structure and ornament should come together. And it is so. But goodbye, rationalist, timid, Cartesian structure. Here is a different kind of structure. Is an embroidered structure. Is an exskeleton. Is a different conception about how a building can stand. These people innovate. These people create. They create new things. Of course, well, she died, you know, rather young for an architect, but most architects today live over 90. And I like to say that they probably live longer because they lead very creative lives. But here I'm contradicted because she died at 65. She could have lived longer, and she was very creative. So maybe my point is not the correct one. Anyway, look at the interior. I think it's magical. I almost regret it's a hotel. But whatever it is, you know, what is happening here is magical. It is geometry, it is rigor, but it's also the peacock's tail, to refer to John Ruskin's words, that the most beautiful things are those that are the most useless. It was built. It's also possible that she made great efforts. I mean, you know, to have so many works imagined and built, you know, they didn't just happen. There was effort, without doubt. Imagine just inspecting the building site, which sometimes, at least sometimes, she had to do, you know, and all these projects were adventures, you know, to build this building, this new building, this unusual building. It was a big adventure, which she assumed. The Contemporary Art Museum, it's a project which not built, but I regret it was not built. I am usually rather hesitant to admire too much whiteness in architecture, but this one has because of the unusualness of form, of shape, is you know, it's almost like a divine creature, you know. It could have been magical. The apartment buildings in Milano, she actually, if I remember correctly, she built them for herself. She was the you know, the developer. These are apartment buildings, and here she uses also wood, and this is not very common in her work. So these were built in Milan, in Italy. I think, yeah, she was the developer of this project, and also the architect. Not far away from them, also Daniel Lipskin built. Daniel Lipskin was trained at Cooper Union in New York when John Haydock was the dean. And Zaha Hadid, as I said, she was trained at the Architectural Association in London when Alvin Boyarsky was the dean, or I don't know, the director of the school. So these are in Milan, in Italy, a housing complex. Did she make kitchen and bathrooms in these buildings? Of course she did. These are functioning apartments. Did she have to handle pipes and technical aspects? Of course she did. They were built, you know, they function. So this visionary, this you know, crazy architect who had an unusual understanding of architecture was able to accommodate what is called reality in her works as well. You know, so the idea that if an architect or a student doesn't follow the prescribed rule of drawing or whatever, can fail, yes, that could happen, but not by necessity. Here we have an unusual architect who was quite able to build. This is a block of flats by her. Are these apartments affordable? I don't think so. I imagine they are very expensive. And I have my own theory that I regret that Zaha Hadid didn't use her talent and her influence to work also for those less privileged. I even have my own theory, which is probably false, that maybe she died because of this, that she was I actually think Zaha Hadid was very alone. Yeah, she was part of the elite. She was part of, a certain segment, a rarefied segment of society. But I think, I like to think that if she would have had the wisdom of Le Corbusier declared once that he didn't attend parties and so on. He was invited, of course, because he was very famous. But he said, I prefer to have a glass of wine or to talk with fishermen at the edge of the sea. I'm afraid Zaha was too much trapped in this world of high fashion, high end everything. And perhaps her solitude, she felt her solitude even more. We are going to see many pictures of her, maybe in this presentation. And I don't know, although she smiles sometimes or laughs, my feeling is that at bottom she was alone. And proof of this might be found in the fact I learned via a Turkish architect who visited her in her apartment in London. Somebody told me that she didn't have a kitchen. Zaha Hadid in her apartment, a very luxurious and large apartment, didn't have a kitchen. This says a lot. Of course, she was very able to buy food already prepared from I don't know where. But an apartment without a kitchen has something sad about it. And she was alone, I would say. But she sacrificed herself probably for architecture. She succeeded brilliantly in a way which very few people would be able to even dream of. I mean, she received the Pritzker Prize. She received two times the Sterling Prize. She became a Dame, the equivalent of a Sir in Great Britain, although she was a foreigner. She came from Iraq. A remarkable woman, really, by all standards. Was she kind? I think she had a kind soul, but I remember I saw a retrospective of her work at the Guggenheim Museum in New York, and there was a video played there with an interview with her. Someone was taking an interview to her from her, and a young man came to her. They were in her office. A young man, a blonde man, came to her, whispered something in her ear, something probably relating to a project or something. And I didn't believe my eyes, but right then, she fired him. I don't know what he told her, but she said to him right in front of the cameras, you are fired. So, she was a queen. Sometimes probably a little rough, a little raw, but I guess to be a successful queen and to build so much, you had to have that side too. I don't know. I mean, again, having an office with 400, 450 people to run such an office, you cannot be a, fragile blade of grass. Do I like these apartments? I don't know. I mean, yes, I admire to an extent the fluidities, but what I do not like so much is this slickness. These are very slick. I mean, this is my personal state. I find them too slick. I don't know if I can relate to this. But you also see, the importance of ornament. There are here things that are not required for structural reasons or whatever. They are strictly ornamental. And they have their importance, I would say. But I wish there was a little bit of, now maybe, when I don't know when these pictures were taken. It's possible they were taken, just after the building was built. and not much life happened at that time. It's possible because it's possible that when people moved in, things became more animated and so on. But there is slickness in her works, it's this white slickness, and in my opinion, is a little bit problematic. I'm glad to hear that at least she used wood, which is a rare event in the works of Zaha Hadid. Here are the apartments. Now you can see, these are not apartments for proletarians, with so many bedrooms and so on, but, there are people who can afford it. Imagine just making the working drawings for this project, but she had at the same time tens of projects in her office, so this was just one of the projects and it was built. On the other hand, I have to say, I've heard her in a video, in an interview with her, saying nobody knows how to do toilets any longer. It was as if I don't know, somehow, a voice from the old school was making this statement. Now, Roca London Gallery, this is a piece of design for these extravagant shoes. I don't know if these are the legs of Lady Gaga or not, but you would imagine Lady Gaga wearing something like this. And here she is, she designed everything, but you look at her face. This is not a woman who didn't know suffering, I think, and who didn't know melancholia and maybe even depression sometimes. And I think she knew something about loneliness, that she was lonely. Yes, she designed this piece, she designed this, she designed the dress, she designed everything, buildings upon buildings upon buildings, but at bottom, she was alone. Yes, here she laughs, but and she had all the reasons to laugh, kind of wildly, but I also think she was timid, although I just remember that episode with firing that employee. But it's I think at bottom she might have been timid. That's why I chose that picture for the invitation today with her as a little girl, because it's something about that little girl. Plus, it's a reminder, it's a reminder. Life is fleeing, life is ephemeral. We are children, and one day we disappear, just as she disappeared 6 years ago on the 31st of March. So what is life? What is life, Mr. Putin? You provoke death and misery in Ukraine, and you forget that you yourself, maybe who knows when, you'll exit. Why are people so confrontational and so naysaying, destroying life, when we are all extremely fragile, and lonely, actually, and we kill each other, it's terrible. But I also think, I think she was a beautiful woman, and a woman with I think she was capable of generosity. I don't know if you know, but I actually listened to her when she said, at first she didn't want to hire Patrick Schumacher. She didn't like him at first, but in the end he became indispensable to her. But I will arrive also at pictures of her with Patrick Schumacher. Also, it's a very interesting case because most of the time, of course, the boss was a man, and then the woman architect would knock at the door of the male architect and would ask for a job. But in this case, the boss was a lady, the lady we are looking at right now, and those who knocked at her doors were sometimes men, sometimes women. Although from what I understood, her intention at least, but I think in good measure, she hired many women architects because she believed in women. And we are going to read a little bit later a quotation from her where she advocates the case of women. She was a passionate woman, a fiery woman, you know, and how else could she have built what she built if if she was not like this? She had to be. No, she was a phenomenon. Zaha Hadid was a phenomenon. Maybe you know, but she was very inspired by Kazimir Malevich, the constructivist Russian painter, artist, but who also had, you know, some kind of, you know, visions which could have been called architectural. Yes, she had a great sympathy, if not love, for Kazimir Malevich. She inspired herself from suprematism. And I think I have somewhere here a picture or two from an exhibition, an homage to constructivism, to suprematism. She designed an exhibition dedicated to it. I think you can see her loneliness here, you know, and she doesn't seem to be happy, actually. But she left something behind. An incredible body of work, and you know, that's why we talk about her today. Maybe you know, she was born in Baghdad in an affluent family. Her father was the leader of a political party, but she was trained not here in her own religion. She was trained in a school run by nuns, by Christian nuns, and I think she grew up in an environment very open-minded from a religious point of view, which mattered a lot. Uh, you know who this is, Daniel Lipskind. I don't know why I included him here. Anyway, back to Zaha Hadid. Well, you know, both Daniel Lipskind and Zaha Hadid were two of the seven deconstructivists who show their works at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Deconstructivist exhibition, Deconstructivism. And both also share the fact that they were, you know, immigrants. Daniel Lipskind immigrated from Poland to the United States, Zaha from Iraq to Great Britain. And they also, as I said, in Milan, they built several blocks of flats in very close proximity. Yes, Zaha, we didn't forget you. And I'm sure there are other people in the world who pay homage to you today, at least your own office. Here she is, I think, in Miami, starting the construction of the 1,000, I don't know how it is called, that building, that skyscraper she built in Miami, and she actually died in Miami. The you know, the foundation of the building was started at this moment that we look at here. Maybe this was the mayor of Miami or the other one. Anyway, here she is. An adventure, again, an adventure. A building should be an adventure. Otherwise, why are we building it? I don't know where she is here. Maybe she's in that, the only house she built. She built only one house in Russia for, of course, a very rich man. And it might be that she is in that house that she built. The only residential building that she built. I mean, a private residence. Did she have a private plane? I think so. I remember, I cannot put my hand in fire because of it, but I think, yeah, she had 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 her own plane. And somehow I remember that it was a black plane, you know, painted black. But I could be wrong, but my memory is telling me this. And you know, here it is Patrick Schumacher. We are going to see more of him and her in the second presentation. An incredible meeting, actually, you know. And but this German architect, I think, had a great intuition that he would find the correct, if I am to call it so, the correct job working for Zaha, and I think he did. And they formed an incredible team. Some people thought that they were or they might have been involved romantically. Apparently not. Here she is younger. It's possible that she was a student at AA at that time. You are going to see soon also a picture of her at that time when she was a student together with Rem Koolhaas. Now, this is the Prime Minister of England right now. I don't know why he's here in the presentation, but he is just to flavor a little bit the presentation. I see the little girl. I see the little girl in this picture, you know. She's an adult, of course, a grown-up woman, but I see the little girl. I so regret I didn't meet her in person. I would have loved to. I think she even had a sense of humor. I see on her face here. And of course, to create at such a level, you have to have open-mindedness and to be, you know, generous and playful. Playful is very important, to be playful. Is that the medal, the Pritzker one? It's possible. Here she is with Rem Koolhaas. They were both students at AA. I keep saying we need freedom in the schools of architecture. We need freedom. We need creativity. Enough is enough with Dame Zaha Hadid, 1950, 2016. Yes, she became a Dame of Great Britain, not a little honor at all. A few quotations from her. I see women the world over as smart, gifted, and strong, with the talent and commitment to transform lives. It is totally true. Architecture is really about well-being. On the one hand, it is about shelter, but it's also about pleasure. Well, you know, from pleasure to playfulness is a short distance. They are actually, you know, good relatives. it's really about playfulness. I started out trying to create buildings that would sparkle like isolated jewels. Now I want them to connect, to form a new kind of landscape, to flow together with contemporary cities and the lives of their people. Zaha Hadid. There are 360 degrees, so why stick to one? And I think you know to which one she was referring, the 90 degrees. She's right. If there are 360 degrees, why are we using the T-square and the rectangle? Here she is with Frank Gehry. I don't know why so many glasses there with all kinds of liquids. It's a strange picture, but here you have, two formidable creators, although there are critics who criticize them. I still think that our world, not just of architecture, our world would be poorer without them. Group picture, I know some of these people here. This is an important Czech architect, and Amanda Levet, and then Sir Norman Foster and Peter Cook. Maybe I don't know who she is. Anyway, and Zaha in the center. I always have problem with his family name. Jan Klapinik. I can't memorize his name, and I so regret. He was an excellent Czech architect. Unfortunately, he died. But she is still active, and they were married at one point. Very interesting architect, Amanda. Anyway, here is another group picture with Zaha at the center. Always alone. I mean, alone in public, alone with in groups of people. That she's essentially alone. This is an image from that exhibition dedicated to suprematism that I mentioned earlier. She did the design. Okay, and now we go to the second presentation today. I have others, but I chose just to make these two presentations today. Just a second. Let me start from the first slide. I will show new works, but I will also talk a little bit about her and her partnership with Patrick Schumacher, because it's very important to talk about both when we talk about the new works of her office, Zaha Architects. Here he is, the German architect who initially she didn't want to hire, but slowly he became indispensable to her. And this is very clearly illustrated by the fact that I watched a video in which a Chinese developer, a woman, who hired Zaha Hadid to build a building in China for her. She said Patrick Schumacher was in China inspecting the building site when I received a call from London, from Zaha, saying, please send Patrick immediately back to London. And the lady said, well, I can't. He's necessary here on the building site in China, so we can progress with the construction. Zaha said, No way. Patrick has to come back immediately to London. I don't think in her later years she was able to function without Patrick. They became a duet. They became a team, and he became indispensable to her. And I saw in another video with her, they were at a conference table, and every time he talked, when she said something, she would look kind of for approval or something in this sense towards him. I think she became more and more accustomed to work with him, and she relied on him. She trusted him. I think it was a very, very fruitful relationship. Here they are. I always like the building behind. I hope I have more pictures with it here. It's a little museum, not a very large building, but one of the best, I think. So here they are. I don't know very well what to think about this piece of clothing that Patrick has here. I have to say, Patrick Schumacher, he is German, but I suggest to you to search on YouTube. There is a video with a dialogue between him and Mark Foster Gage at a Texas university in Texas. And Patrick is beautiful, immensely temperamental, very, very energetic and passionate. I mean, beautifully so. You would say he is Latin, he's an Anglo-Saxon, he's a German, but his fire, his inner fire belongs to the South, belongs to the sun. We need people like him. We need people with passion, great passion. Here they are. You have to understand, in order to build such buildings and so many, you have to dedicate your life completely to the task at hand, maybe working 18 hours a day, if not 20, if not 22, if not 24. Yeah, I always love this picture, I mean, yeah, they are younger, of course, and you can tell the German is, insinuating himself in a way, in the remarkable activity of this remarkable office of this remarkable architect, Zaha Hadid. I don't know, was she some kind of a mother figure for him? I don't know, psychologically, I think it was a very interesting relationship between them. They were not lovers, but they were almost like lovers, and they were both lovers of architecture. And I love those books behind them, and it's this climate of, look at her expression, there is dream. This is the face of a dreamer. Well, you don't see too much the dreamer perhaps on his face, but they were complementing each other perhaps. But she is, in this picture, she's a dreamer. And I don't know, I love this picture, I love this and very articulate people. I mean, Patrick Schumacher is a very, she has a PhD in architecture. Zaha didn't have, and she didn't need it. But Patrick Schumacher is a very well-trained, formally speaking, architect. And now he's running her office. And I think he's doing a good job. I remember her saying in an interview that, Patrick would hire anyone. She was kind of joking, but I guess in opposition to her, he was just hiring everyone, because of course, at one point he became, the hiring and maybe even firing force within the office. Here they are, at some award ceremony or something. I like Patrick Schumacher. I like him, although I think he has some enemies, but I would offer him a Pritzker as well. I think he deserves it. It remains to be seen, but in a few years, their office is still very, very, very active and creative. Now, Russian mega smart city. I only show here newer works by the Zaha Hadid Architects Office. So Zaha Hadid Architects, working in collaboration with Russia-based TPO Pride Architects, well, right now in the context of the Ukraine war, this sounds a little bit unsettling, has been selected as one of the 3 consortiums for this neighborhood in Moscow. I'm not reading everything here. Let's look at the project. I don't know. I'm not totally seduced by it, although there is fluidity, of course, but I don't know. I don't know. I do have. I mean, it's obvious that I admire Zaha Hadid, but I have some reticence, if I am to call it so, about this high-end splendor in white, you know, with lots of glass and air conditioning. And I mean, you know, who do you think lives here or would live here, even in Moscow? Very rich people, you know. I mean, you know, I read that. Well, anyway, most of these apartments would go for around $1 million, if not several. So I think there is a segment of society that they didn't address in their works, and I think this is a regrettable thing. Yes, maybe that person who published the book "Form Follows Finance" was in a sense correct. I'm talking about the director of the Museum of the Skyscraper in New York City. She published a book, Form Follows Finance. In other words, form follows money. So these forms would not have been possible. This is a project, but I don't know. It might be that the Russians built it, although I understood that when the war started in Ukraine, the Zaha Hadid office stopped working for the projects, several projects, I imagine, in Russia. This is in China. Sorry about this. I mean, it's just here. Yeah, it's a very fine YouTube video, but I don't have it active on this presentation. I don't know if this is going to be built. Already the influence of Patrick Schumacher is strongly felt, because he did bring in, you know, a lot of parametricism, scripting, programming, and so on. His PhD was on the philosophy of architecture, but he was also applying his German rigor to the highest digital techniques and technologies. So this project was done after she died, but her spirit continues, the office continues. She actually didn't die. Let's put it in this way. She didn't die. We talk about her today. We look at works that some of them will be built, some were built, some will be built, and she didn't die. And this is the power of art, in a way, to transgress death. 5 Zaha Hadid designed projects still to be finished following the architect's death. The Morpheus Hotel, we saw some pictures of it. So this is in Macau, the Morpheus Hotel. I like its name, Morpheus, much better than Hilton or whatever. This was built, was finalized, and we see real pictures of the real building. Can you believe, of course, the very, very, very hard work to make this building come into being, but also the excitement to work on this project, you know, because it's about discovery. It's an adventure. Imagine even the engineers working on this structure. This building had to stand, and it does stand. I mean, just to, again and again, architecture is beautiful, and not just architecture, life. Life is beautiful if it is adventurous. If it is an adventure, if it's not an adventure, it's banal. We have seen some of these pictures, maybe not exactly this, but similar. So outside and inside. We look at pictures now, that's all we do. We look at pictures, but there were architects working on these things, which with matter, with materials, had to become what we look at. That's not an easy thing. Imagine the surprise now when you go inside this building, you know, and you discover things, unexpected things. I don't know what that so-called sculpture is doing there, but maybe I'm too much of a purist and moralist, and there is a certain kind of art, so-called art, that I do not like, it's true. But maybe that's because myself, I'm not sufficiently playful or open-minded. It's possible. Morpheus Hotel in Macau. Look at this structure, and it is structure, but it's an embroidered structure, and is a structure which is also ornamental. You need guts to do something like this. Really, I mean, now, I have to say, with all due respect, Kenneth Frenton told me the computer destroyed architecture. I'm sorry, I don't think he did. I don't think it did. I don't think technology destroyed, or you know, the computer destroyed architecture. But without the computer and without the digital technologies, this would not have been possible. Simply would not have been possible. Well, with them, they became possible. Now, this is the building which probably she went when she died. She was probably going to Miami in order to, I don't know, inspect the building site of this building, 1000 Museum. She left Miami. The building was built. It's uh, it's a rather phallic tower, but most towers are like this. Maybe this one a little bit too explicitly so, but has now that I look at it more carefully, maybe I see a certain bisexuality here at work. It is biological, it is, I mean, physiologically rather explicit, but anyway, I shouldn't become myself too explicit. It was built. Again and again, this was not built for the proletarians. This was built for very well-to-do people, you know, with a lot of money. But maybe a lot of architecture is built like this, you know. The villas of Palladio were not built for the peasants in the fields of Italy, you know. They were built for noblemen. I was mentioning the adventure that architecture perhaps should be. Well, we see here in the building site. Imagine these people building this, you know, it was adventurous. But That's where the excitement is. And look at the difference between her building and the others. I still find it a little bit too figurative, physiologically speaking, but maybe. Anyway, Esfera city center in Monterrey, in Mexico. I don't know if it opened. It was a project, and I have this high density residential building, the designer first project in Mexico, comprises 981 flats and spans 9 stories at its highest point. Another project for, some kind of Mexican yappies, if I am to call it so, or call them so. This again, I find a little bit problematic. She only addressed a certain segment of society, and I would say she addressed the 1%, not the 99% of society. And it's possible that, and she did have the soul of an artist, and she was sensitive. It's possible that this alienated her. I think it did. I like to think that it did. I mean, I'm not happy that she became alienated because of this, but I think if she kept a real connection with the other members of society, not just those in the 1% section, would have been better for her. Beijing New International Airport, China. It opened already. This presentation I prepared a little bit earlier. So to cope with growing outbound traffic, but this statement was made before the pandemic, journeys are expected to rise again this year after a record 4.5 billion trips. Anyway, things are very changed now because of the pandemic. China is building what is built as the world's biggest airport. And who else built it? Zaha Hadid, unofficially called the Beijing International Airport. Anyway, designed to handle 100 million passengers a year by the year 2004. Who knows? Let's hope COVID will go away, but who knows what, plus we entered the climate warming phase of our human life on Earth, and all kinds of problems. It was designed to look like a phoenix spreading its wings. Construction was delayed, and in December, I don't know what year, when they discovered 200 tombs from the Qing dynasty, 1644, 1912, were unearthed during construction. You know it. It was published copiously. Here I don't know if I have pictures from the finalized work, but it's a fine, in my opinion, a very fine work. And, immense, of course, but architecturally so significant. Yes, I have pictures of the building as it was built. I find this, glittering flooring a little problematic. Just think about the effort to clean it up. This is what I was trying to say when I actually said it, that her architecture is not raw and is not earthy. She did claim that that's what she wanted to arrive at, a raw, earthy, vital architecture. Vital perhaps is, formally speaking, but is not raw and is not earthy. And this floor is almost, you can maybe, work on your mustache in reflecting your face on it, but it's too shiny and too whitish, and I don't know. It's not raw, that's for sure. But otherwise, the building is interesting, and I particularly like, and I don't know if on this presentation, on some other presentation, beautiful pictures during the construction, like even here, again, talking about adventure, building a building, being an adventure. Look there, the Mao's flag, so to speak. Look at the, communistic flag. You know, this airport was a great effort, of course. They did it. Look at it, construction site, the construction site. Again, we don't build cathedrals like in the Middle Ages, but we build other things that are impressive themselves. If something bothers me, and it does, and I already said it, is this excessive whiteness. You know, whiteness, too much whiteness and glittering surfaces, in my opinion, you know, difficult to maintain, and even aesthetically, I would say a little bit problematic. But in terms of forms, of shapes, I think is brilliant. Isn't it beautiful that actually a woman, a lady, had the audacity to do this kind of architecture? Not a man, but a woman. I truly hope patriarchy will be replaced, at least for a while, by matriarchy. I think we need a change. It's very clear that women are very creative and they can be at least as courageous as men. We have an example right here. So this building was completed. I don't have here, you know, the latest pictures, but you know, it was published. Look at this. It is amazing, isn't it? You know, I mean, you know, how could we criticize the computer? You know, well, without the computer, this could not have been built. Impossible. I like it actually more during construction. In my opinion, during construction is more raw, vital, and maybe even to an extent earthy than when it was finalized, because when it was finalized, it became too shiny and glittering and slick. Now, what is this? A metro station. It was the construction began. I don't know if it was finalized yet. This beautifully designed project has all the distinctive trademark curves of a Hadid structure. I don't know. For me, this is a little bit too flamboyant. I mean, it is a railway station after all, for God's sake, you know, don't make it like it's, you know, the Dionysian palace of ultimate intoxication. It's a railway station, but okay, you know, she built it like this. It's, I don't know if it was finalized. This is just a project, but again, for my taste, too much whiteness. Although in this case, the floor is not so white, but there is a lot of whiteness. In Singapore, One North Master Plan, this plan for a large neighborhood in the city-state capable of serving a population of 138,000 is a true reflection of the avant-garde sketches from an early on in Hadid's career. The Soundwave Concert Hall by Zaha Hadid architects in, I think in St. Petersburg in Russia, they won the competition and is going to be built. It's possible you know, they interrupted the work because, you know, Putin took the tragic decision to start the war in Iraq. and Zaha Hadid architects stopped at that moment their work in Russia. I'm not going to read all this text now, but this is, you know, there are all kinds of comments about this project. The orchestra people, the music people involved were very enthusiastic about it. Anyway, you have to understand, as I said, Zaha Hadid was infatuated with Russian culture through Kazimir Malevich and through suprematism. So for her, I'm sure, and even the, you know, her workers, her employees, her colleagues, you know, they follow the tradition of an affectionate dialogue with the Russian culture, because at the very beginning she was influenced very strongly by Kazimir Malevich and suprematism, the Russian constructivists. So, you know, it was in a way a love affair that continued for many years. The winning sound wave concert hall was won by Zaha Hadid architects. I don't know if she was still alive when they did this competition, probably not. Anyway. But her research and her, you know, way of doing architecture continued and continues. So, you know, it's no contradiction between what they do now and what they did when she was alive. That's why I'm saying she didn't die. Zaha Hadid didn't die. And no great artist or architect or writer or musician dies. They continue through their work. So this is what the artistic director of this Ural Philharmonic Orchestra said. For musicians, this new hall is crucial. It will be a musical instrument that brings the sound to life. Too bad now that the war machines made us forget about the beauty of music. And it's too bad that, again, you know, Russia has a great culture, has and had great musicians, writers, painters, filmmakers, and so on. And you know, these tragic events make us forget sometimes, at least, you know, the very profound culture of Russia. Anyway, I will end this presentation, imperfect as it was, with this interesting diagram, if I am to call it so, done by Patrick Schumacher, where he identified various so-called, he calls them styles, you know, the epochal style, modernism, and then he thinks that after modernism follows parametricism. But what is interesting, he found these subsidiary styles: functionalism, organicism, rationalism, brutalism, metabolism. By the way of metabolism, tomorrow we'll talk about Kikutake. Kiyonori Kikutake was a metabolist, a high-tech, and then two transitional styles. That's what Patrick Schumacher thought: postmodernism and deconstructivism. And then he thought that after deconstructivism followed parametricism with its until now, four subsidiary styles: foldism, blobism, swarmism, and tectonism. And, you know, when I look at this diagram, of course, any diagram is simplistic by definition, because it's a diagram. Things are more complicated and more complex in reality. Also, I have a problem with the word style. I also have a problem with words that end with ism. Ism, they are all end with isms. But I think there is a certain level of legitimacy for what he illustrated here. The reason I chose to present this is because I think, at least here in Romania, we are still here. We are still here. But what about all the other, subsidiary styles or whatever you want to call them? We are still obsessed by functionalism, when in fact, even within modernism, there are many other sides to it: organicism, rationalism, brutalism, metabolism, high-tech. But then let's not forget what followed. Postmodernism happened in the 1980s, then deconstructivism in the early 90s. Now we are, more than 30 years later. There is parametricism, there are all these things that we call them foldism, blobism, swarmism, tectonism. This would be the last phase until now of parametricism or subsidiary style, tectonism, in the vision of Patrick Schumacher. I really think we should talk about these matters here in our country. We cannot remain here. This was more than 100 years ago. Things happened in 100 years. Anyway, and in tectonism, for tectonism, Patrick Schumacher showed this picture, examples of tectonism. Essentially, is the same architecture that Zaha Hadid promoted, but things become more nuanced. There is also the arrival of various materials, various textures, various tectonics, also fractal geometry, more accentuated. So it gains in complexity and materiality. But this is a subsidiary style, as he put it, to use his words, of parametricism. And this is the last slide of this presentation. These are his words, Patrick Schumacher's words, in which Zaha herself believed ornament and structure are not separate. Ornament and structure are not separate. So we say goodbye to Zaha now, 6 years after she died, 6 years after she didn't die. Thank you.